Welcome everyone to the 365 Message Center show. This is Darrell as a service and
Daniel Glenn here
And-
live from Ignite.
exactly, and we've got our guest here, Mike Ziock. And Mike Ziock, oh look, it's quite a long title. Let's try this. Senior Director of Services Engineering for Microsoft 365.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone.
Yeah, great. Look, we're really excited to be here, of course.
Yes.
Those of you who watch us usually see some crazy sort of slick offices with shelves and
Slick?
hats
Is
and
that your definition?
yeah,
Okay.
like well, I mean, but mine's reasonably slick, isn't it? Sure.
Yes, of course. Yeah, but today we are live we're sharing the stage with Channel 9, but we're live on stage at this very nice studio. We just hope we don't ruin it. I'm so excited to be here. This
Yeah.
week has kicked off with a huge bang, and we're first up to really talk about not only the Message Center, not only what we're doing here at Ignite, but also we're talking with Mike about how this all plays into the greater story of roadmap with Microsoft 365 and how we're communicating to users. So fantastic, I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited about talking to Mike because really where this show started, the origins of this show was Darrell wanting to set down some weekly check-ins of making sure that me as a personal individual, goes to the message center and checks it regularly. And I thought, let's share this journey and be a little open and authentic with it. And then
You said chickens.
Yeah.
I thought you said chickens.
I
So
heard chickens
I'm sorry.
too.
I heard chickens.
do I have to put my American filter on?
No. Please don't. Please don't.
Okay. Yeah, but that's the origins of it, and here we are we're at this amazing event. So what we usually do for those of you here in the audience and those who are tuning in online is that we go through the Message Center, we look at a few things that have dropped in there over the week, we pass a few comments about it, but we of course are going to talk a little about some of the announcements for our regular audience.
Well, Darrell, we have to.
Yes.
Because the Message Center is a little light this week on purpose.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be overloaded in the coming weeks
Yeah.
with messages. But we are definitely going to be talking about some announcements that have been made, a lot about OneDrive and Teams and how we're going to be doing collaboration in the future.
Exactly.
And the next wave of collaboration.
Yep.
As well as, like I said, talking about that overview of how this process all works.
Well, I'm sure Mike knows what's coming because
That's right.
it's all sitting there in the queue and you're going to tell us how that all operates. But let's get right into it.
Yep.
So I have left a couple of messages up there from last week just to make it look a little fuller.
Yes.
But there is only two for this week in my message center. We're not in a position this week to be able to compare and see what's in Dan's because sometimes there are some differences.
Right.
Because it is specific to our tenants, isn't
That's
it?
right.
That's right, isn't it, Mike?
It is.
Yeah,
In,
yeah.
in our best efforts to make it targeted to each customer and make sure they're getting the message that's appropriate for them.
Yep. So we do see those differences. Sometimes Dan and I will share the screen and do that. Let's have a look at this first one that we're looking at, which is around My Analytics nudges in Outlook. Now, we have access to My Analytics within my tenants and also in the tenant of where I work, Adopt and Embrace. And so we do find My Analytics to be quite useful to be able to almost use it like a Fitbit and see how I'm performing or how I'm interacting with my team. But the interesting thing about this message is the nudges within Outlook. Sometimes I don't check that panel down the side. You know the panel I'm talking about?
I do.
Yeah?
And I think we get so focused on what we use a tool for, it is difficult sometimes to see the auxiliary. And so when you're in Outlook, what are you doing? You're writing messages, reading messages, checking your calendar, focusing on discussion, that kind of open conversation that you're having with those individuals or groups. But then, that kind of auxiliary things that I often get annoyed with. And I'm just being honest,
Yeah.
And so I think what's going to have to transition for us is understanding that we need to pay attention more.
Yeah.
Especially if we're using My Analytics with helping us be more productive, understanding where we're spending our time, where we are spending time that's not as productive, not as efficient, and so we can balance. Work-life balance is something we've been talking about for years, but to attain that, we're going to have to pay attention to how we're spending our time.
Mike, do you use My Analytics in Microsoft?
We do,
Yeah?
certainly as customers.
Personally, you?
And myself, I do as well.
All
yeah,
right.
it's in one regard, sort of in the Fitbit model. It's nice to see. Getting information that I'm sending emails to staff outside of working hours is kind of a nice thing to remind myself of, not to keep people up at night, as an example, and seeing that I do multitask in meetings is an interesting thing to understand, that I maybe should be a little bit more focused.
Right. So these nudges perhaps solve that problem if you've got your My Analytics panel closed most of the time because you want that real estate to read your messages. But the nudge is going to appear above your message, and it's going to say, oh, you're booking another calendar meeting, and perhaps you've been doing a lot of this today, and you've got a lot of meetings back to back. Maybe you want to book yourself some focus time. That's one of the nudges that I quite like in there.
Dave. I say that. The
2001 Space Odyssey.
It
Dave.
is.
Right, yeah.
I had a conversation just last week about My Analytics with someone who was like, I don't want it because I don't want my boss seeing if I'm being productive or not.
Oh.
Now, I said, well, then maybe you should be more productive, and maybe that's the problem. But anyway, this was a friend, so I was a little bit brutal honest with him. But I think it's interesting. I'd like to see some of the feedback given this of, wait, you're watching me?
No, well, it's not that, is it?
No, but you see what I'm saying. I think it's going to be interesting to see how people accept this and how fast it happens, right? To accept that a computer is telling me that I'm working too hard.
Yeah. So expect to see, I think there'll be some more nudges. These are just two.
I agree.
To give us a prompt as to how to work smarter. And that's really the goal of My Analytics, is working smarter, leaving yourself some gaps. And I think this is a good theme to think of in an IT Pro conference, where we're so used to having things back to back. We work in just crazy long hours. We have to work in some time to have some focus and have a look around at what else is going on.
Agree.
Let's move on to that next message. And I guess this is where we could, actually we'll come back to Mike on this one, but this message is, we're rolling out multiple improvements to Project Online. And so there's some things that are going to make it much easier to use. And look, the interesting thing about this, we will come back to Mike on this, but I don't use Project Online in my tenant. So Mike's going to tell us a bit more later about how these messages are targeted. Sometimes they're going to be messages that are specific to my tenant based on how I'm using it. And other times it's going to be maybe because it's prompting us to think, what else could we use within the tenant?
Yep.
So let's skip over that. We're going to get into some other announcements. As we said, the message center is a little empty. And maybe is that an indication that a lot of things are not actually live right now and released at Ignite?
Yeah, we queued intentionally for the Ignite announcements to come, and then ultimately we'll be releasing the Message Center. So that is an intentional output of Ignite, and getting everybody excited about the great features, giving an opportunity to announce live to the people that took the time to come to Ignite, and then it will land in Message Center as well.
I thought it was just to overwhelm us in the coming weeks.
Yeah, what I'm getting a sense of.
It'll give you something to do when you get back to work.
Oh yes,
right?
I don't
how
have anything
many
to do. That's
admins
what
in the
it is.
audience, or people who use the Microsoft 365 Message Center? There's a
All
few
of
hands
them.
there.
Of
That's
the
great.
400 people that are here live.
All right, yeah. Look, Mexican wave to show that again.
362.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Wow.
Everyone uses the
Anyway,
Message Center. That's
that's
great.
right.
Yeah. So I think what Mike's saying is that while it's empty now, check again in a few hours.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some announcements and there'll be some messages dropping in. So we're
Speaking of announcement, I think OneDrive.
Announcements, OneDrive.
I'm excited about this. Files on demand for Mac. Yes, I'm not a Mac person, so that's great. I know people that are, and they're excited. But what I'm excited about is the storage sense integration. So being able to, for OneDrive to be a little bit more intelligent, to say, okay, your space is filling up. You don't have room on your machine for all of these files that you're syncing. So let's clean up the ones you haven't been using. And it's not deleting those. As we know, and we've got this feature rolled out to us pretty recently, is being able to say, I only want this file in the cloud. but I want a pointer there. And when I want to use it, I open up the file and it downloads it for me and I can open it. So being smart about our space with Storage Sense, I think is fantastic. Do more for me, my machine, that I don't have to manage my space. If I haven't used a file in a year, then most likely I'm not going to use it today, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really liking this. Do you see a huge benefit in that?
I do. Like when we saw Files on Demand come out, we understood that there was the ability to click on that file and get it, and then does it automatically return at some point because it hasn't been used? So we're not sure. We haven't really seen that sort of behavior happen, but definitely when it comes to your machine coming close to being full, that thing's going to happen based on Storage Sense. Now let's go on to this next one too around OneDrive, the intelligent prompt to share meeting notes. I saw this pop up, something of that kind of behavior across the Teams experience too, where I had just finished doing a presentation. I had my PowerPoint open, I was doing a presentation within Teams as an online meeting, and then at the end of it there was this little pop-up along the top that said, do you want to share this with your attendees? And we see this as now available too in OneDrive.
Yes, and I love it. You and I are both OneNote fanatics. We are both taking notes. For me personally, it's because I can't remember things sometimes, and so I need to take notes. What did I commit to? What did someone else commit to? What did we say we needed? The direction we need to go. But if you don't share that information, if you don't share that message that you sent or that you presented with PowerPoint or whatever, then you leave that meeting, and what do? You go to the next meeting, and you might forget what was talked about, and so you need those notes to refresh. I really do make it a point to send my notes to all meeting attendees after every meeting that I've taken notes so that you can keep up with and compare. Oh wait, you heard that? Well, I have here that this. Let's get back together and talk about it. So being prompted to do that, to share resources that were part of that meeting, I think is a fantastic feature.
Yeah, definitely. Look, as a productivity tip too, when you are in an online meeting and you've got a screen behind you or something like that in a meeting room, put that OneNote up there. Take those notes and have it on the screen so it's like your whiteboard so that people who are in the meeting can understand what's going on. And if you do have a pen and you can digitize a few things, use it as a whiteboard. I've found it to be quite useful, even like English as a second language, even as a communications tool. So it's good to see that there's that follow-on, hey, let's share those notes with those attendees.
Yes. And one thing, so the next one we had on the list was in Teams, and we've been really buzzing about this for a long time, is having the ability when you're in a meeting, I'm going to take one. I have a lot of meetings in my home office, okay? And what do I have? I've staged my shelving and with the, but it would be nice to sometimes not have the stuff behind me show up in my meetings. And so background blur with Teams is a fantastic feature. And you had it. We talked a little bit about it last show, right? Because it came into your tenant a little soon.
That's right.
But what I was actually going to ask Mike about is, I know a lot of Microsoft people are on the go. They're not always doing meetings in conference rooms. They're doing it from their office. And is this something that is prevalent within a large organization who has a lot of meetings, I'm sure? Yeah. Is this, background blur, is this something that's used often?
Well, I mean, it's a much needed feature. I mean, ultimately, one of the great things about the cloud is a lot of times you're seeing things very close to when we're seeing them as opposed to the olden days where we would be playing around with things for years before you were able to see it. So, I mean, certainly for myself in my office, forgetting that I have something on my whiteboard behind me, it's very nice to have the capability of having that removed so I don't have to worry about it. Am I sharing something that I shouldn't be with the folks?
And that's exactly what, I have a whiteboard, stuff on it, so I've had to move my camera, and it would be nice not to have to worry about that, to focus on you, right? It detects your face, focus on you, blur everything else so you can focus, so that the attendees can focus. And, this is why we've been using Lorem Ipsum forever, when we're creating websites, and we don't want people focusing on what they shouldn't, we want them to focus on the elements. So I think this is fantastic.
oh look, if I take this to user voice, I want to see some different filters. Maybe instead of a background blur, I'd like to have some sort of nice Hawaiian theme in the back.
You want a green screen is what you want,
green
Darrell.
screen, and just put whatever I want
All right.
behind it. That would be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing in Teams, which is a new focus, is enabling first-line workers.
That's right.
So we are hearing some noise around Staff Hub that will eventually be wound up in, so I think it's September 2019. So they're moving a lot of that capability into Teams in a way to enable your staff to be able to clock in at the beginning and end of the day. Yep. So they have a home
Plans
capability.
and schedules.
Yep.
I mean, that's key. If you think about frontline workers who are having to manage schedules that sometimes changes weekly, right? To be able to, who's going to be when and they're where and all of that. So I think planning schedules and shifts and swapping, I think, that's prevalent of, hey, can you swap with me to do that because I need to be somewhere else? So having the ability to, again, like you said, check in, check out with clock in, I guess I should say, and the shifts. That's where we're starting there. But I think that's a fantastic capability for frontline workers.
Yeah, definitely. How about around priority notifications in Teams? So sometimes you are going to get a notification from someone who's important to you. Maybe they've even put the words urgent in their message. And so Teams is going to remind you every 2 minutes for about 20 minutes, not forever, but it's going to say, hey, there's something that's important there sitting and waiting for you. So another good feature there.
Yep.
What about the chat and screen sharing, like on the one-to-one sort of scenario?
Yes, I've been talking about this for a while, being able to screen share. One of the big capabilities that I've been using over the years with Skype has been this, hey, can you show me how to do something? And rather than me show you, let me take your screen and show you on your machine how to do this. But doing that screen sharing with on a one-on-one is huge in that. So in Teams, that's private chat, right?
Yeah.
And being able to do that in the private chat is very important.
And it doesn't have to be a meeting now, so
Nope,
it can be, it's just a call between you and I, so that's
right.
important. I noticed you didn't highlight this one. I've got to say something here. I'm a Yammer fan. I've got to get a sticker for this, right? But I'm really excited too about the Yammer tab in Teams because I see that great scenario of being able to have conversations.
Maybe you just throw me on the bus,
Oh,
as if I didn't start it. I said, Anyway.
I do that. Sorry about
that's
that.
Right.
So being able to have these conversations in a Yammer group and bringing them into a team so that maybe that team can focus on what's going on, formulate their response, share it to a conversation, and then get back into the Yammer group. So we've seen a lot more integration there with Yammer and Teams as well. So
then last one, before we get back to the project online and talk about with Mike on that, I think is managing teams from the admin center. And really, we're talking about membership, channels, the team's admin role. And I like this to enabling us to kind of centralize that management a little, not moving it, but bringing that capability there so that we don't have to go click here, do the thing, click here, do the thing. Click, in one spot, be able to manage those. I think helps us the workflow, the work flow for people who are tasked with this to manage teams and making sure that it is set up the way that the organization needs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I know there's a lot more announcements, and obviously, like Mike said, there's going to be a few queued up for this week, so keep an eye on it. It will be a lot fuller than my two. Yeah. But let's come back to that one about Project Online, and this is going to give us an idea about how, well, let's maybe just take it back at the start, Mike. We're kind of interested to know how does a message become a message in the message center? There's some features or something that have been worked on. It comes its way through a certain path. Yeah. So maybe you could give us an insight around how that works with the product groups.
Happy to. So we need to rewind for Message Center because Message Center is the place that we tell you something is in process for you as a customer. We want to have it as targeted and as accurate as possible. If we rewind from there, it's the roadmap, but we need to take a step backwards. Engineering, as they're building their capabilities, are actually putting them directly into engineering tools, which are the start of the roadmap. So we're not managing this as a separate activity. The feed of the roadmap is actually from our engineering system. So when you look right now, for example, on our newly announced Microsoft 365 roadmap, there are 250 plus features in development capabilities out there, 70 plus that are rolling out, I believe, and another 30 or 40 that have completed. There is an enormous amount of information, and it's reflective of the engineering teams starting with the information, putting it into our engineering databases. That is automatically extracted into the roadmap. So it's not somebody going and typing in something fancy. It's actually tied in. So we are connected with the engineering system. Now, there's a little bit of a marketing overlay to make sure that the wording that we're using is relevant for the audience. Once it's in roadmap, it gets a roadmap ID. And that roadmap ID is relevant because we carry that forward into Message Center. Now, Message Center is targeted. The intention, think about the roadmap, anybody can get there. You have the capability, it's a public website, but Message Center is targeted to you as an administrator. And the intention is to give you messages that are relevant to you, but then also give you the capability of filtering out messages that you think aren't relevant, because I'm the Exchange admin. I only want to see messages relevant to me as the Exchange admin. And in Message Center, you have a large number of toggles of I want to see these messages, I don't want to see those messages. Now, with Message Center has a number of other pieces tied into it. There may be blogs associated with it. There's going to be TechNet articles, et cetera. But your path is always going to be what's on the roadmap. Ultimately, that should show up in Message Center. That then lands in my tenant. If you are a targeted release tenant, are you both good Microsoft 365 customers?
Oh, we like to see things early.
Or you like to see things early,
right.
great.
Yes.
It's good to hear. For larger companies that may have thousands of employees, you don't want to have every user within your organization getting every feature. And so targeted release has a sub-feature called select users. So inside of targeted release, you state, I want these 10 users, these 50 users, these 100 users to actually see that feature. So we can get feedback as the IT organization about the use and capabilities, so we can provide that back to Microsoft.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. I think we talked a little bit before, but it was about how that message, we've got the product, the feature, that we're talking about creating, and it's on the roadmap, which means it's being developed, right?
Yep.
And when the message then gets created, it's part of that tracking. It's all that information is moving forward, which I think is nice, because you don't want too much the information to be separate, because we don't have a unified message, both internally in Microsoft as well as to us, the customer, right?
Yeah.
And so in having that move forward, you talked about targeting and how that plays into it, and that comes back to the Project Online. Darrell, are you using Project Online in your organization?
No, I don't think I've even dabbled in it in this tenant.
Right.
So tell us a bit about what kind of message this is.
Yeah. So the message that you're speaking to is a generic message of capabilities for Project Online. So you could look at it and you could say, I'm not a user of Project Online, but you maybe should be. It's difficult for us to make a determination of, hey, you're an organization that will never use this capability, maybe using some competitive technology, or using Stone Tablet and Chisel to manage your projects, and so Project Online is not for you. That's not our determination to make. We do make it easy for you to see the message, to dismiss it, to filter messages, etc. Now, on the flip side, if we are giving you a message that says, within Project Online, as a user, this is a change that we're making, that ideally I would only target to Project Online customers. And we work hard with the individual engineering teams to give us a list of customers these are individuals that have active usage of Project Online within their corporation or their business. And so we will get that list, and we'll actually do a targeted message. When you gave the example, Daniel may see something and you may not, is exactly that model, whereby we are not just spamming everybody. We're making targeted efforts to make the notification as relevant to the customer as possible.
So if I was using Project Online, and let's say that the URLs changed, or there was some difference in endpoints, that would be a different kind of message?
Yeah, well, it would be a message in Message Center, but ideally then it would be only targeted to you as a Project Online user, but as you aren't one, the ideal would be that you wouldn't see that message because it doesn't have relevance to you. You know, our goal with Message Center in general, as well as when we post for Service Health, is timely, targeted, and accurate. We want it to be relevant in terms of targeting the message. We want it to be accurate. We don't want to have bad information, stale information out there. And then ultimately we want it to be timely, that the information gives you enough time to be able to take action against it. Now, in that regard, if you ever have an issue, for example, you get this Project Online message and you go, why the heck are you spamming me? There is the opportunity of clicking that little like button or dislike and saying, hey, I actually don't like that message. I don't understand this message. I hate this feature. That information goes directly back to engineering. It doesn't go to a support organization that looks at it, et cetera. It actually, in every message we encode the engineering owner, my organization that's accountable for communicating to you, and the product marketing team that is accountable for the success of the product feature launch, et cetera. And those individuals get the communication. And if that communication, and you give the opportunity for us to provide you direct feedback back, we may respond back telling you thanks for the feedback, or hey, we're actually going to take your feedback and make a change based upon the feedback that we've received from you and others. So be a part of the conversation would be my most strongest imperative is to use this capability, because you are direct line into engineering when you communicate via the like-dislike feature Message Center.
That's important, because I think oftentimes people think that when they give feedback to Microsoft, it goes into this massive intake that is, millions and millions of people are saying things, and so things get filtered 10 times before it ever gets seen by a human. And I think that message is very important to be communicating, is if you have feedback, to use the tool, right? To like it. And you were talking about, you look at those numbers of the percentages of likes for a message to understand how in the marketplace it's being received. Is this a good message that we did well? Can we maybe take, if it did really well, maybe take how we did it and apply it to others in the future? And if it didn't do well, let's learn from that as well.
Be a part of the conversation is most important. I mean, Message Center is one place. User Voice is another tool that I'm sure you're very familiar with. All of those are direct line to engineering. And I mean, our goal in delivering cloud services only are successful in their ability to connect directly to the end user and change based upon what the end users as a group are telling us. So our goal is to keep removing every layer of abstraction and getting the message closer and closer to the engineering team that owns the feature.
So Mike, let me ask, is there any memorable piece of feedback that you've been able to action as a team that you've really valued, or maybe you found it even humorous?
Yeah, well, there are instances, for example, where we will have simple things like, hey, this URL isn't working because we posted to Message Center in excitement, but marketing hadn't gotten the content ready on the back end. We will take that feedback, we'll get with marketing, we'll get it updated. About a year ago, we put this really great feature concept out there. We notified customers via Message Center.
You didn't do air quotes with really great feature.
Really great
Thank
feature.
You. Appreciate that.
The really great feature was, hey, we have an abstract understanding of organizations based upon directory, and directory has managers and they have users. We'll create distribution groups for you.
Of the Office 365 groups,
the service
based on the direct report.
Based upon the directory information that we have. Again, we don't have direct access to the directory, but we can see there is a manager with 20 reports. We'll do the right thing and we'll give you a distribution group. Well, on the announcement of that, it was one of our most viscerally responded to features. There were some expletives actually in Message Center. We do not filter messages. I don't think I have received any personal death threats, but they were along the lines of, how dare you make a change like that? I own the distribution group model that we use inside our company. Our engineering team responded to that within 24 hours. We pulled the feature in terms of releasing it into the service. So you can think about sort of going back a few years where we would have delivered that into the product offering and there would have been nothing they could have done. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll wait a year or 2 years for the service pack. I mean, here you're actually getting dynamic feedback in from the users. We were in the process of releasing that. We had already done the development work on it. We were now announcing it, and our users said, we don't like you for doing that, and we changed our direction.
So this sounds like, to me, not only is the message center a communication device for our admins and enablers with technology in an organization, but it's also maybe that last checkpoint before a feature is rolled out of, is this going to be well received? I know Microsoft does a good job of talking with people and saying, how would this work? As MVPs, we have conversations all the time with product team of, I'm hearing customers say this, or do this, or don't do that. But then when it comes about, it seems maybe like the last point of, here, we're communicating this to you, and in this case, the overwhelming majority said, you need to slow down here, this is going to impact me negatively, then maybe it's like the last stopgap before a feature gets released.
Yep.
Is that right? I mean, you think?
Yeah, you are correct, because I mean, we're now at the point of moving forward with it. And I mean, let's get real, everybody has a busy life, and sometimes you're not paying attention to the roadmap, you're looking at Message Center
I'm
because
sorry,
it's targeted.
people do not pay attention to the roadmap in the Message Center?
Yeah.
You should start your own podcast or show to develop that discipline.
Yeah.
No, anyway. Yeah,
Anyway,
that's
sorry.
good. Look, hey, the other thing that I guess it sort of feeds into, because this is a way of giving feedback, there's been a few changes in the Message Center, and you've done a session recently talking about it.
Gave a session yesterday with regard to it. So one is, so first for the roadmap, we have the new Microsoft 365 roadmap. We've integrated Intune and EMS in there now, so you have the full set of capabilities that represent Microsoft 365. You don't have to go to a whole bunch of places. If you attended the broader session from Ron Markovic, you saw that we're bringing together and changing the view of the admin center all up to make it much more capable for companies and not having to go and hunt and peck for what they need to find. In Message Center specifically, we had recently developed and released, and I want to reiterate them, the major feature capabilities. So we flight our releases within Microsoft, and we actually now have coded in stops in the flight to ensure that we're providing at least 30 days notification for major updates, so customers have time to plan. And you also now get this wonderful banner at the top that says, hey, major change has been announced, and here are the things that you can do specific to that major change. You may
Even
be
an
able to,
email too that comes through based on that.
the Message Center Digest, another feature
But I
that's
think we
well
actually
up.
get one that's individual to major updates.
For major updates you do. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And you can toggle that on and off as well. I'm sure you both have it
Yes.
toggled on.
Of course.
Yeah, great. But within that then, that gives you that countdown timer to understand what's happening to your actual tenant. Now, I do have to let you in on a little bit of a secret. As we are taking that feedback from our customers around targeted release, et cetera, we may get feedback that says, hey, this feature actually would be better if X. Okay. Now, as we get that, I think everybody would agree, it would probably be better to make sure that we take that update in rather than release and then re-release. And so one thing that is a piece of feedback that we get from customers, we don't have a perfect answer for it yet. I imagine you've heard it from some of your constituents, is could you please tell me exactly when this is hitting my tenant? Yeah. And the answer is not yet. And part of it is intentional. Because we are taking that feedback, because we are making updates, it may stay in targeted release. Now, we are working within the new roadmap, et cetera, to have the concepts of separation between rolling out targeted release, so you can actually get a better glimpse of where the feature is in its particular life cycle. Yep. A feature that is announced but not yet delivered. Customers are certainly, many of them are aware of GDPR, which launched on May 25th. Companies have a greater responsibility to regulatory agencies for notification of privacy and security events in Europe. Some of those things already exist within other countries. And we are defining a role called the privacy and security role for message centers. So you will be able to turn off Project Online and Exchange and everything else because I'm not the guy for that. I only want to see the security privacy messages. And oh, by the way, those messages won't be available to anybody but the security privacy resource and the global admin defined to the organization.
So there is another role I think that was going to be talked about for accessing the message center, and I think this was around enabling the change managers and people that needed to inform the user base about changes that are coming.
It's called the reader role.
The reader role, and this is where I spend a lot of time. It's enabling. You know, we, as we talked about earlier, you said, IT Pro is not a purely technical role anymore. It is an enabler role. It is something that we are there for our users. And so it is, that 30 days sometimes is very short when you're talking about, I need to work with my users, educate, come up with a plan of action to implement a major update that's coming. Sometimes it's plenty of time, right? It's a little change, you're renaming this, you're moving this, and you know, we can communicate that in a weekly newsletter and be fine with it. So I think that's the feedback that I'm hearing is that it doesn't always work for me. That's the feedback, right? Well then, but we know that this is a global, global world is what I had in my head, and okay.
Yeah, well, it's true.
But this is a global working force, and it also has, we all work differently. And so what may not be sufficient for you for 30 days, oh my goodness, I've got to come out, roll out a plan in my organization because that's the way it's said, and we have to do that. I can say, oh, I just need to send an email and I'm done, right? So I think that the struggle is real for how to balance that. And how are you internally having those conversations to try to get that balance?
So first, when you look at a lot of the major updates and read the significant detail that we try to provide with regard to those major updates, in many cases, you as the IT pro have control over the feature. We'll say something like Teams is going to be enabled by default within 30 days. You can change that. You ultimately will either provide you a toggle, or you can go in via licensing and make an update and say, hey, Daniel is not licensed for Teams. So the 30 days is not, in many cases, a place where at that point, the line in the sand, everything is going to roll out. You can actually control it. So there are some customers that have actually taken Microsoft's release strategy as we roll out services. We go through sort of what we call rings of validation. We start with the engineering ring, which is 10, 15,000 employees inside of Microsoft that are the engineering teams that build these services that are getting daily updates. Okay, then it rolls out to Microsoft, and you could imagine, just like if a large corporation couldn't make their earnings announcement, if Satya or Amy Hood had impact, that is a significant issue. And so Microsoft is treated as a first-class customer in that regard, but we still get it early and we recognize that we should absorb pain before our tenants do. Then it goes to targeted release, and then from targeted release, we start to saturate from there. Now, if you're a large corporation, you may want only 1,000 people to use Teams. License it for those 1,000 users. Get your rollout strategy built over a period of weeks, months. You don't need to do it within that 30 days. You can actually control it and do your own rings of deployment of feature sets within the organization.
And I think that comes back to what you had started to talk about. Sorry, I kind of jumped on that. But as far as the reader role, being when you're managing this process within your organization, it's not this siloed thing of, okay, you're going to do this in that you're going to do everything in that role. Some people do need to be able to just be informed. I'm an enabler. I'm a facilitator of getting things. I need to be able to read what's going on. I don't need to do a lot of stuff. I just need to know what's going on and that's coming down to my users so I can help them, and get there. And I think that development is huge for us as IT pros who are again not high 100% technical anymore, right, Darrell? I mean, that's the importance of making sure that we help facilitate that and push that responsibility onto others as well, right? Yeah.
So I mean, the role-based way of accessing the message center is going to be valuable. so that those who do need to focus can focus. And I guess I could lie this alongside how we've now got the focused inbox. We also need an other.
Yeah.
So focused, this is my role and this is what I do, but I am also interested in what else is going on within the tenant that would give me some contextual understanding of what's going on.
So
The context is important there. Yeah.
You're sort of along the lines of what we do in the Service Health Dashboard. We notify incidents and advisories. You may be the Exchange admin and want to see all Exchange messages, but you want to be able to reference the other ones, so you toggle on Exchange. But so that's a good feedback and something we'll take a look at. I do want to call out Daniel, as you talked about the role of IT. It has drastically changed. I mean, when you look at technology in general, it has been democratized. What's happened is if users don't get the features that they want from IT, they just go out to the cloud themselves and get it. But on the flip side, I think that the IT organizations have a great opportunity, and the reader role plays a great capability in this. It doesn't need to be IT anymore. Your biggest users of SharePoint or Yammer may not be and likely aren't IT. It's HR that is a big Yammer user, as an example, as they're broadcasting messages out. Why not make them a reader? They are probably going to be more excited about the features that are coming in Yammer. They're going to be more capable in giving us feedback with regard to those features. And oh, by the way, it makes the job of IT much easier as well, because ultimately they're not having to be this sort of singular funnel for everything that's coming into the organization. And they're taking a community-based approach to it. And most successful companies that have truly gone through the digital transformation have done that. They have democratized the capabilities. They have their community groups built out. They've gone to their sort of rings of deployment internally, et cetera. So they ultimately can absorb the capabilities that we're delivering. And look, we are giving you 300 plus features per year. If you think about an IT group trying to message every one of those and getting that message out to every user, it is going to be like the olden days, and you're going to have a backlog of 400 changes coming. And so ultimately, we need to be in a position, and our customers need to be in a position of being able to let that change roll without getting in the way, but more importantly, enabling their users and being those ambassadors of change in the digital transformation.
That's right. And I think as a IT pro, I've seen that transformation, and from a no, we can't do that because we have some sort of policy, to a enabler and helping you get there. And your comment about a department using a service or a part of a service to do something, that changes within every organization. So it really is important to identify who those people are and those users are, and make them, give them the capability to see what's coming down so they can apply it to them the way they're using it. You may release something, Yammer was an example that you used, a feature that's coming in Yammer. It may be used by one organization in a way that they have to take action right now, and another's not even using it right now, right? So it is very important to, again, I keep saying enable. I feel like if I had a dime for enabling them to facilitate their own work.
Exactly.
So that, again, and you mentioned it, remove that from the IT pro who may not know how they're using it, right? May not understand all of that process.
We'll switch from the word enable to empower.
Empower, okay.
Empower.
But
How's that?
I guess as we think about enablement and empowerment, we'll wrap it up. We're starting to think about this. So look, Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for coming to this show as well as coming to Ignite.
Exactly, and to the online audience too. It was great to be able to live stream. So we do like to try and check in regularly with people like yourself to, if there is any changes that you can make us aware of, that we can help make our audience aware of. It'd be great to be in touch as well. So thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks for those who tuned in online. It's been a great ride so far. All I would say as we finish off is keep that eyes on the message center, because it's going to get busy this week. And it's setting us up for, and the roadmap.
And the roadmap.
And the roadmap, because it's setting us up for the next 6 to 12 months of change, and really getting our heads around that as IT pros and enabling our community. Thanks very much.
Thank you.